Well, Anglo-American on its knees 3 years ago has had a really good bounce back courtesy of the performance of two of its biggest investments. Anglo-American Platinum and Kumba Iron Ore seem to be heading in a positive direction. Both of these companies announcing in the last week they're paying very, very solid dividends, particularly Anglo-American Platinum. I touched on Chris Griffith, the chief executive, just a moment ago, paying its first interim dividend since 2011. Viv Govender, here is a conspiracy theory for you. Anglo-American global mining conglomerate, two big investments in South Africa. One is a platinum mining company, one is an iron ore producer. Two of them, in huge uncertainty related to the mining charter, decide now's a good time to pay out a big meaty dividend. Let's get this money offshore. Is that too much of a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're taking enough of the value offshore with each dividend you take here. But yeah, again, the example we use, with regards to Kumba Iron Ore and Anglo-Plat's commodity prices determine that Kumba Iron Ore comes back. And Anglo-Plat, despite, magnificent, turnaround, it hasn't really done too much in terms of the reaction because the platinum price is under such great pressure at the moment.
Platinum price is under pressure, but the platinum group metals, and this is something I've learned fairly recently, 6 metals. One of them is a toxic metal, and in there you got palladium and rhodium and a couple of other things. Yeah. The basket price of all of these platinum group metals went up about 18%. Although platinum itself is down because of its limited industrial use, the rest of the basket did quite well.
Yeah, but also you take into account the fact that it depends on what the mix is you get on the other ground, where it's in South Africa versus like in Russia, for instance. Yeah, the problem with platinum, like we talked about the platinum price under pressure, it's because what's happening with regards to diesel vehicles, especially in Europe. Yeah, platinum, because it's better than the others at being a catalytic converter, actually operates at a lower temperature, and therefore diesel, which operates at a low temperature, uses it more. If you use a petrol vehicle, which is a higher temperature, engine, you can use the other metals, in that example, and you've seen the drop off. And also recycling is becoming a huge factor with regards to platinum. I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but I've heard figures that pretty much that more than one car can be made from a recycled platinum from an old car. So that's also coming to play. And
that's precisely why Chris Griffith has committed hundreds of millions of rand to projects to find new uses for the metals they produce. They've got to create new markets for themselves, otherwise they're in trouble.
It's never a good sign when you're investing in trying to find new customers and technical applications, because when you're selling as much as you can produce, then that's not the sort of thing you bother with. But look, in amongst all of that commentary, there were basically tens of thousands of jobs lost at Anglo Platinum. So, and obviously some of those were a result of asset disposals. But all credit to Chris Griffiths, because I think you're right. He's a top corporate operator, and they've pulled that one out the fire. Here's another thing about Anglo-American that's interesting, is that Indian guy, Agarwal, has accumulated like a 25% stake in Anglo. Huge. Which is a bit discomforting if, South Africa's corporate titan of yesteryear, our most venerable company, is perhaps in the sights of the Vedanta crowd. One wonders what they have in mind. Perhaps that's another reason why the share price has been towards that.
It's been massively elevated, very little pressure below 280 Rand, happily around the 300 Rand mark for a long time now. And this was a company that a couple of years ago, you talk about, it was very much on the brink of self-destruction.
Wanted to sell everything. Yeah. Now they want to keep everything.
Now, they've got results coming out next week, and the speculation is they're going to announce new acquisitions. Are we in that part of the cycle now? They've done the savings, now it's time to spend.
Any idea what they...
the rumour is something in iron ore. Iron ore, everybody wants it. It certainly won't be in South Africa, I don't think. Not at this stage anyway, in terms of the mining charter.
Yeah, look, I mean, great management team, Anglo, under Kutufani. He is still the boss, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
You can tell how interested I am in the mining sector.
Yeah, but you can also, that goes to Viv Govender's point, that the CEO doesn't matter, because South Africa's most venerable company, you don't know who the
commodity cycle looks a bit better, but I'm afraid that I lost interest in this space in 2014, 2015, when it became apparent that China was moving its economic development model away from resource intensity. I think commodity industries are very tough, and I wouldn't invest there.
So you would go absolutely nowhere, any single commodity?
Because it's just too hard to predict margins, because you are a price taker in all of these commodities. And I fear that there are certain commodities which frankly are heading into a sunset era. Coal is definitely there, platinum. I think electric vehicles will take care of that in some years to come. I just think one doesn't want to be putting your hard-earned savings into an environment where there's so much uncertainty.
Which bears the question as to what the mining charter really is all about. And if more and more people have Paul's particular perspective on this, luckily there are people who like to dig holes in the ground and take stuff out the ground, where there will always be mining. But if more and more people have Paul Theron's attitude towards this, we've got to rethink the way we structure this mining charter. You've got to be more grateful for investment rather than dictating to people what they can and can't do in a sunset industry.
Okay, I'm going to say something now that's controversial, but...
Excellent.
Okay. Okay, I think the mining charter is silly because we don't think of the right...
Silly. Now, that's not controversial. That's quite gentle.
Because look, there's one commodity in the world where the commodity producers are very wealthy. What's that? Oil.
Oil. I was going to say data, but yes, okay.
Oh, yeah, it's oil, right? It's one extractive commodity. Take it out of the ground that the commodity producers are wealthy. There's no copper sheikhs out there. There's no platinum sheikhs out there. There's no, okay, maybe there is one, but there's very few other commodities where you have these super wealthy countries living off a commodity. And the reason for that, and one of the big reasons for that, is OPEC. Yeah. Okay, when we look in South Africa and we talk about having a mining charter, we should be looking at a mining charter for all the producers of iron ore that we can basically talk to. We should have a mining charter for all the producers of magnesium we can talk to. Those are the things that we can actually. Oil prices basically have a premium probably when OPEC had control of over 100% over the natural price of oil. We have 100% premium over the natural price of platinum right now, and we won't have any job losses. We won't have any difficulties in the sector. And the same thing applies to magnesium. Same thing applies to a number of other commodities like iron ore, where we could team up with a handful of other countries and really create, monopoly pricing for those particular commodities. Yeah. Why we don't do that, I just need to understand. It makes no sense when we have an example of what works, why countries don't do it.
Well, I'm grateful that they don't work because, we've got enough inflation in our lives as a result of that cartel. Cartels are bad, Viv Govender.
Unless you're involved in it.
Exactly, this is your cartel. But I'm not part of those clubs, unfortunately. I'd love to be, but I'm not. The BRICS guys have been in town, and that's lovely. We've seen the Chinese premier come in. We've seen the Indian premier come in. Vladimir Putin's been in town, and there are lots of commitments to investment in South Africa. Why don't I feel grateful and excited about $14.5 billion of Chinese investment? I don't see the cash. Maybe that's the problem.
Look, we're in an interesting pre-election phase here in this country where on the one hand our new political elite headed by the venerable and honourable President Cyril Ramaphosa is trying to talk up the game about investment inflows. And then on the other hand, we've got all these horrid policy debates around land and around the National Health Initiative that are making investors feel uncomfortable. But that's what happens in an election phase. This thing about the goal and how much money we're going to bring in, I think the Chinese must be cooked in the head, because if they're giving money to Venezuela and to Eskom, those two are about on a par as quality credits, if you ask me.
In terms of solvency, yeah.
So, I don't know what kind of deals have been done in the back room to guarantee the Chinese, pinky promise, we won't let this one go down. But I think it's all in the sphere of politics. They want to be seen to be doing good with their mates at the level of the BRICS gathering and making commitments.
If we get in the real world, if you are a wine producer or a South African shoe producer, or you export iron ore and the Chinese promise to import more of that stuff, then we get a benefit. That's a real economic benefit, especially in a world where trade tariffs are going a little bit mad, Viv.
Yeah, look, the Chinese are doing a thing called One Belt, One Road, which is I think it's probably the biggest coordinated foreign policy initiatives, probably since the Marshall Plan, which is the rebuilding of Europe after World War II. It's about 60 countries. It goes all the way from Asia all the way to Africa. The Chinese think in the longer term than most people think. And in their view, you put the investment right now in, and you'll get benefits for decades thereafter, like the US did with the Marshall Plan, where decades thereafter they had effectively client states in the US, in Europe. And so what they're doing right now is they're putting a small amount of money into continents and into places that are going to grow in the future, hopefully. And the benefits that they will reap for that investment and this infrastructure and the stuff that they're putting in place right now, hopefully in the future is going to be positive. But you've got to understand that the world owes us no favors, and even if they did owe us favors, they wouldn't pay them. Everything is an exchange. If they bring money in here, they bring money for a reason. We've got to accept that there is always going to be a quid pro quo for this kind of thing. We just got to make sure that the deal that we get is worth what we're going to give up for that deal. And so stuff that's like, the 14.7 billion, understand what exactly we are giving up for that deal. And if it's a good deal, fine. But if you're giving up, the baby with the bathwater, etc., to get that deal, that's obviously an issue we have to worry about.
Well, more on this conversation, more slightly balmy perspectives, which we're looking forward to in the final part of tonight's show. More after the break.